Hello, everyone. I'm Jill Valley, and thank you for joining us for this Facebook discussion that we're having with some of Missoula's high school seniors, a junior, one who just graduated from Hellgate High School and is headed to college in the fall. It was about 6 months ago we met with this same group of young people. They were journalism students at Hellgate High School. They partnered with us through the Scripps Media Literacy Program, and they produced a news story where they asked their peers, if the University of Montana sometimes gets overlooked as a viable college option when you grow up in Missoula, so many want to go away for their college experience and not go to college in their hometown. It was a really interesting conversation. And now we're in a completely different situation. It is 6 months later. We're in the middle of a pandemic. So how people are thinking about college and higher education may be changing just a little bit. Major colleges like Washington State University, for example, going all online this year. So if you were an incoming freshman, what you thought was going to happen your first year in college is not. It's completely different. Other schools are doing the same thing. So we thought, since this really does impact this demographic, we need to reconnect with our students and talk about this pandemic, how it may have impacted their plans for college, or how it's affected them personally and their timeline as they move forward towards higher education and try to build their resumes to be attractive to some of the admissions offices. And then what happens once you're actually in college. So let me introduce you to our panel. They are great. First up, we have Luke O'Connell. We also have Solomon Kenworthy, Josie McDonald, Dan Blackwell, Allie Cottle, Zara Morris, and Maya Decker. Now, Maya graduated from Hellgate and she was accepted to Yale University. Not a bad way to go. Congratulations. All right. And we want this discussion to be amongst you guys. You don't really need me to ask you questions unless you'd like me to, and I will then jump in. But this is kind of about you. It's about how you're feeling in this pandemic. And I'd like to start with Maya. You're going to Yale, an Ivy League school. That conference has already decided they're not going to do sports. So how is it looking for you as an incoming freshman? What does your freshman year at Yale look like at this point?
Yeah, so I was given the option to be able to live in residence for my fall semester. However, most of the courses are online because I think if you've been following the news, you've seen it's been really difficult for like international students to come to the US. And so colleges like Yale want to make their university system as accessible as possible. So even though I'll be on campus in the fall, most of my classes are going to be online. I'm hoping to have a few like in-person seminars, but we don't really know what that looks like. And then my spring semester will be completely remote. So I'm going to come back to Missoula, hopefully be able to do some internships here while I'm doing my spring semester totally online. So yeah, that's what it looks like for me.
It's not probably what you pictured, I imagine, going.
No, not at all. Yeah.
What about the rest of you? I know that Maya's going off, but you guys are all starting to think about where you might go. Has this pandemic changed your trajectory at all, or has it made you think differently about where you might want to go to college? Do you want to pay that much to go to a big school online only, or do you want to stay home and maybe try to get through this? Discuss. Go ahead. There you go.
Yeah, so for me, I know that college was a huge concern for a lot of my earlier high school years. I literally had no plan whatsoever. And with this, it's kind of made me think that, how important necessarily is going to some big college or the best that can offer. The education is obviously important, but something else to consider is how much, as much as it'd be cool to live in New York or whatever, do I really need to kind of situation is where I'm at. And so it's just definitely made me think that you can get great education closer than you might think if you do a little more research on it.
What about the rest of you? What do you guys think? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still kind of holding out hope that things will be better by the time I'm in college. But I've also kind of found myself looking at schools that are a little bit closer to here. Just because if there's an outbreak or something were to happen, I think it'd be nice to be within driving distance. And yeah, like Solomon said, I think there are a lot of great schools that are a little bit closer. So.
Yeah. And how does it look as you start to build your college resumes? I know some of you may have missed out on some opportunities this summer. Go ahead.
It's definitely been a lot more difficult to kind of find things to do to build your resume, especially when you look at like standardized tests and stuff. Like I was supposed to take my ACT in March, but I didn't take it till this month. So everything's kind of been like pushed back. So.
Has this been frustrating to you, or are you guys taking it in stride? Oh, I see we had a comment down in the corner. Go ahead, hon.
Yeah, like Luke was saying, I still haven't had an opportunity to take the ACT. So that's kind of one way my college list has changed, is I'm primarily looking at schools that have gone test optional. A lot of them have. And that's kind of overwhelming and anxiety inducing, just all the uncertainty with, I mean, like Josie was saying, even not knowing even like what school is going to look like when we're freshmen in college, let alone what the application process is going to look like. And a lot of things, like a lot of plans are canceled in terms of the summer as well, which is also tricky in terms of the application process.
So the ACT was delayed. Do you think that impacted the way you guys did on that test? Do you feel maybe you didn't do as well because it didn't happen when you anticipated it to happen? Go ahead. Yeah.
I think I did better than I would have if I had taken it in March. I think I had more time to prep and I was more aware of the proximity of it because I had more time. So yeah, I don't know. I think it might have helped me a little bit.
What is your general anxiety about all this? I mean, because when you're kids, a lot of you're high functioning, high achieving kids. And I know you probably had a timeline on how things needed to go, and this completely tipped that on its ear. And now what you were planning to do to be academically successful, or how you were going to go forth and get the college if you want, it's different now. You talked about it's anxiety riddled. Is that the same, the rest of you? Are you feeling that way too?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's pretty terrifying, to be honest. Like just in general, I can't really do any social interaction with anybody without feeling guilty of perhaps catching COVID and spreading it. And then when I think about possibly going to college or going somewhere else where I don't know anybody, and I don't know, like, what if I go to a badly regulated school or something and they're like maskless, they're like, I don't know. It's scary to me to just think about like leaving my bubble of like my house, and then like first in general with my friends, but then even like going to college, that's even scarier. So yeah, it's scary for me.
It is kind of a wait and see thing for some of you who still have a few months before you're gonna go. Do you think any of you might delay going to college after graduation if this pandemic continues on its current course?
Well, yeah, I was definitely going to like probably wait. I mean, I don't really want to go, like I said, I don't really want to go to college if coronavirus is still happening. I just don't think that's a really smart thing to do.
What about the rest of you? Anybody else have a thought on that?
Well, as I'm a grade younger than everybody, I'm only a junior. But one thing that I'm kind of worried about is if a lot of people decide to take a gap year or defer, will that make it hard for me to get accepted into college when I'm go?
I can answer that potentially. So I was wondering the same thing, because I remember when I was looking at the admission statistics for the college that I'm now going to, I was freaking out. And I was thinking about if I was in your guys' circumstance and say half of the class before me had deferred. I can't confirm this, but what I've heard is because admissions are based on like the amount of space that they have, since they'd have such a small, say like my class of 2024 is going to be pretty small, then there's a chance potentially that they'll let the class of 2025 be bigger because they have more space in the residential colleges. That's not really confirmed, but just something that I know like my classmates and I have been discussing.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts in all of this, I think, where we don't have a lot of the answers. Is this going to impact education as a whole, do you think? I mean, half of you had most of your, Maya, for you, it was the last semester of your senior year. The rest of you, missed out on half of the school year. Do you feel like you've been behind? Do you feel like this could impact education down the road because you missed out on a pretty big chunk of your classroom instruction.
I was actually talking about this with one of my family members recently, and she was saying that she's worried our generation is going to have just like a gap of knowledge because everybody, I mean, if we stay online, everybody is most likely probably falling behind a little bit, because most of my classes during quarantine and learning from home, we were just doing review rather than learning new topics because it's really hard, obviously, to instruct students and learn virtually. And so I do believe that we missed out on some vital instruction.
Anybody else have a thought?
Well, I think losing the physical aspect of education was really big for me because I know that personally, like kind of what Zara was saying, it's very hard for me to focus when it's just like online. Like, to be honest, I feel like I do a lot of work because I feel socially expected to. And when that expectation is kind of taken away because there's nobody to, like, you know, I don't know, like push that onto me, I'm just like, nah, I won't do work, whatever. Like, who cares, you know? But I'll just hang out at my house and watch Netflix all the time, whatever.
Right.
You know?
Accountability is a thing, right? That's a good motivator.
Yeah.
Maya, did you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so before I graduated, I was a full IB student, and so I was taking 6 IB classes, and I would have tested out of them, but then we didn't do tests because of coronavirus. But something that happened is like the level of expectation was still the same, and so I was doing like really heavy course load and doing like working on a lot of material myself that I normally would have gotten help from teachers with. And even if teachers are like willing to correspond via email or via Zoom, it's like not the same as at all as having in-person interactions. So yeah, I think it just goes back to what everyone's been saying, and like it's really hard to have the same level of accountability, and then students have to be productive on their own, which also I think leads to this like really awful like productivity cycle where if you're not productive all the time at home, you're like, oh gosh, I'm kind of worthless. And then I think people's mental health also kind of starts to go with that because, you know, they don't have access to the different resources that are available when they're at school.
Yeah, very good points there. For those of you who are going to high school again in the next month, are you looking forward to it? Do you think it's too soon? Are you prepared to have the distance between your peers and wear a mask and all the things that will go along with that based on MCPS's plan, however that is actually finalized?
Well, what I'm afraid of is like I'm somebody who thinks that coronavirus is obviously real and that everybody should have to wear a mask and that I think that that should be enforced. And I'm afraid of stupid people who I believe to be stupid, as in people who would choose to not wear a mask because they think it's some expression of their rights to not do so. I'm more afraid of, because I know that like everybody in this call I trust, they're not the type of people who would like not wash their hands or anything, but there's definitely people at Hellgate who I would not feel great being around during a global pandemic, if I'm being completely honest. That's my main concern, to be honest.
That kind of brings up another point that I'm worried about too, because even if we get a vaccine, what if not enough people take it? What if we never go back to normal? Because I still have hope that like maybe I can have a senior year, maybe I can go to college in person. But if we don't get a vaccine that works and it's not spread around the population, we're gonna be stuck like this forever. Possibly.
That's true. It's part of that unknown, unfortunately. How have adults handled this? I know you've seen adults reacting, and some do believe in the masks, some don't. Their debates are not always well thought out or kind. As the younger people who may be dealing with this down the road, how have we done as grown-ups in talking about the coronavirus and keeping people safe? There's a head shake. Go ahead, like talk about that. Like, you disappointed? You wish that the conversation was different? What would you do to make this better?
Well, I just think it's become like way too political. Like I don't quite understand why there's so much debate surrounding it. Like, I guess I would have expected that people were more trusting in science. So that's been a little bit disappointing. But
I agree with you, Josie. I'm also pretty disappointed, and I also have been thinking a lot lately, like maybe if it had been handled better or differently in the beginning, we wouldn't be seeing like a surge of cases that the United States is currently experiencing, whereas other developed countries are handling it a lot better. And I mean, potentially we'll be able to go back to normal sooner. So that, yeah, there is a lot of frustration and disappointment towards adults and leaders and just their handling of things. I mean, I'm not a scientist or anything, and I don't know how, like, what the best way is, but it just seems like they could have. It seems like if more people listened and believed in science, like it could have been handled differently and better.
Go ahead, Maya.
I also think that, I think we recognize that as Americans, we really value freedom. But a lot of people don't really understand that like your freedom and your personal rights end where someone else's begins. So like, for example, I work a customer service job, so I'm wearing my mask for like 7 hours straight. And it's like not comfortable, but I'm okay with it because I recognize that I'm like interacting with customers and that me wearing a mask like also protects them. And it's really frustrating to not have people recognize that and understand that they need to like sometimes let some of their freedoms go to protect people that are more vulnerable. And also, yeah, just that people don't even believe that coronavirus exists sometimes is also really deeply upsetting.
Especially since it really has impacted your guys' future. So, go ahead.
Well, yeah, and I also want to say, like, I wouldn't blame adults in general. I would blame those in positions of power which have chosen to do very little or basically have pretended to deny or like pretended to believe that COVID-19 is not real. I don't really blame adults in general. There's a few, like the people who go into Rose hours and scream when they're told to put a mask on. Like those people are crazy. Like we all know they're crazy. But like who I blame really is like the people in power who are choosing to say, "Oh, it's a hoax. China lied, people died," and all this stuff, which is basically just pushing blame off of them. So I don't blame adults. I blame people in power, and I blame crazy people. But they're much less of the problem.
So you guys are the future. You're going to have to go out and fix this, aren't you? So let's go down the row, and I would like you to just tell me your hopes for the coming year and how you see your future coming together in this pandemic. So right off the top, I think I've lost my notes. Luke, starting with Luke, go ahead.
So I think we need to value like personal safety over kind of like getting the same level of like social interaction with education than we would in the past. So if it means it's safer to not go back to school in person, but like get an education online, I think that we should do that. And it really depends on where we're at when school starts again. And then on top of that, yeah, I'm hopeful that it doesn't push back college like scheduling any more than it already has.
Okay. Solomon.
Yeah, I think something that's interesting that I found just thinking about everything that's gone on within the past 6 months or what have you is that when it started, I feel like everyone didn't necessarily know what COVID was, and for probably 2 months, I'll say it, I didn't even, if someone asked me to describe what it was, I would have no idea what to tell them because all the different news outlets, kind of like what others were saying earlier, it became so political with it's either, well, it doesn't exist, don't wear a mask, or it's wear a mask, if you breathe, you'll die instantly, So for a while, I was like, I don't even know how to react to it. And then with a lot of something else to consider is a lot of these protests that have been happening with COVID. It's kind of weird how they kind of some of them do try and social distance, and then some of them don't. I feel like if there was a more middle ground, I feel like, and I'm tying this together with school because a lot of people in just our school district, I've heard anyway, have either gone, well, we want all masks or, it doesn't matter. And I feel like if there's that middle ground, people are kind of forgetting we kind of need to remember exists. Just because we should in terms of like the personal freedom thing, I was just thinking about this, that just because we should accept everyone for their, various attributes and their various beliefs doesn't necessarily mean there's a difference between right and wrong. And sometimes compromising is as close as you can get to one or the other. And so when it comes to being, in terms of the future, I hope that when we look back at this with colleges and stuff, we're more prepared. Because I remember when this first hit and we went straight to online classes, I'm not gonna lie at all. You could ask my teachers. I didn't turn assignments in for a month. And I'll say it because the motivation instantly was gone. So I feel like it's better preparedness for future schools, and not just colleges, but high school as well. And yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, Josie, how's your school year gonna look?
I guess I agree with Luke that safety should be the priority. I'm hopeful that there will be like some type of in-person component to it. I feel like learning is just so much more meaningful when you can put a face to it and there's like people you can talk to. But yeah, I hope we're more prepared this time around, and that it still feels meaningful.
So Dan, you still gonna work hard heading towards college? Is that your goal?
I mean,
We're a little bit political, so I'll wait to see what you do.
I mean, if it's online, I'm probably not gonna work hard, if I'm being honest. Like, and that's not because I really I don't value education, because I really do, and I think everybody should be educated. It's just really hard for me. I know personally, I'm gonna try my hardest, but I know personally that it's a really different game when my class, I get up, I finish my class, and then I can just my bed's over there, and I could just go take a nap, or I could just go watch Netflix. It's way easier for me to slack off now, and that's awful. So what I'm looking for in the school year is basically I hope that there's a physical component, but obviously I value safety more than anything else in the pandemic. I don't think that we should value some high school experience over literal human lives. I think that's insane. But I'm going to, basically I'm going to try my hardest. And if it's online, I'm not looking forward to it. But, you got to do what you got to do in a global pandemic, I guess.
Right. Whoever thought you would have that sentence uttered, right?
Yeah, I don't think I ever. Yeah, I don't think I ever thought about that coming out of my mouth. But
right. And when we talked to you guys, 6 months ago, it was all about here's my steps I'm taking to college, and now that's kind of different. So, Allie, what about you? You have still looking to college, still working for your plans to?
Yeah, I think the school year is going to be really difficult for us because it's going to be hard to find motivation to learn when you're at home. And I'm speaking for myself, I'm speaking for my friends. I know it's just so much harder to do the work when you don't have a teacher right there. You don't have deadlines that are as solid. But it's also going to be hard for kids of all ages. I think we'll look back on this year in the future and it'll be it almost didn't even exist education-wise. I'm a nanny for 2 little kids, and they're entering kindergarten, 2nd grade, and 4th grade. And so they're learning to read, they're learning to do basic math, adding fractions. And those are really crucial skills that now they're going to have to learn at home. And I think it's just going to be a really difficult year. And so I think we need to come together in order to make it work.
Difficult year for sure. It's almost like they're asking you to be online college kids already when you're only in your teens, and it's hard to have that discipline even for college kids. Believe me, I've been there. All right, Zara, what is your year going to look like? Are you still college bound?
So I guess obviously ideally it would be great if we could just return to everything like how it was before COVID, but obviously that's not going to happen anytime soon. So I think, like others were saying, safety should definitely be our top priority. I mean, what's the point of having a giant homecoming celebration or whatever, and then we all have to spend the rest of the year online learning because we all get infected with coronavirus. That just seems stupid to me. So I think putting safety first just for the next year, or at least until coronavirus is managed, hopefully within the next year, I think that's what we should do. And I mean, hopefully by the time we're going to college, like maybe we'll be able to have an in-person experience. That's all optimistic thinking.
And Maya, I wish so much you could go and have your full meal deal Yale experience, but I have a feeling you'll make it work because you're very successful anyway. What's next for you? I mean, can you go and solve coronavirus for us while you're at Yale?
Oh gosh, I wish. Yeah, for me, it's mostly just looking at how I can do the best I possibly can while online. And it's kind of a lot of like accepting that the past was the past and this is a year of a lot of change. So, my friends and I have been talking about how like we have a new normal now. Like it's just going to be normal to wear masks for a while. And we need to let it go that, we used to be able to not wear masks and we used to be able to be in large groups. And yeah, I'm actually hoping to study global affairs. So, hopefully in like 10 years, I'll be in a position where I could actually change something, but we don't know because that's 10 years in the future. So yeah.
And if we've known anything from the past few months, anything can change in the crazy ways, right?
Yeah.
Anybody have any final thoughts before we go? Do you feel like you have any other point you'd like to make? Jump on in. No? Gotcha. I drained your brain already. Well, you best of luck. Know that we're all thinking about you too, and that watching you guys have to do the online thing and miss out, even now knowing that some of the music programs aren't going to be what they should be, and I know you've missed out on some wonderful opportunities, but we're thinking about you and we appreciate you working hard, and I know your futures are going to be bright no matter what it looks like around the world. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for watching us here on Facebook. It'll be exciting to see what you guys do in the future. I'm Jill Valley, and again, thanks for joining us.